Let's get into a story about Elon Musk and how X is allowing supposedly harmful content and misinformation to spread. So, the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is a U.S. nonprofit and British charity, wants its advertisers to boycott X. A whistleblower recently exposed the organization, whose goal, it says, is to, quote, kill Musk's Twitter. Here to break down this story for us is Gabe Kaminsky. He's an investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. So, Gabe, can you tell us a little bit about the fight against free speech that we're talking about here?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So, Center for Countering Digital Hate, this is actually part of a long-standing fight here with regard to this organization. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan many months ago actually subpoenaed the Center for Countering Digital Hate, and that followed the committee, that Republican-led committee, unearthing documents that show that that organization, which shares close ties to the United Kingdom's government, the British government, that they have been urging, along with various other U.S. government and British government funded entities, for alleged disinformation or misinformation in the United States to be removed from social media platforms. Something really interesting about this organization is that one of its founders, Morgan McSweeney, recently was unearthed to have been advising Kamala Harris's campaign on strategy. Another really important part about this organization, Center for Countering Digital Hate, is that Imran Ahmed, one of its founders, previously, along with other officials at the organization, advised and worked for British politicians. Meanwhile, Nick Clegg, who previously was a board member for the Center for Countering Digital Hate, according to documents we obtained through the Judiciary Committee subpoena, was seeking to pressure Facebook, who then was in contact with the White House, to remove content on social media in 2020 related to COVID-19 misinformation. Now Nick Clegg is over working at Meta, so there's kind of an interesting circular relationship here between the government, social media platforms, and NGOs.
Unbelievable. You can just trace one person, right, wandering in the iron triangle of censorship. One thing that I do wonder about is the difference maker here, maybe the fact that Elon Musk has decided that this means war. And we know that he's had some success in the past in at least fending off these sorts of attacks. But I actually want to get to your story because you yourself have been targeted by the State Department and reports on the state's Global Engagement Center, right, where we've been giving money, our government has been giving money overseas, and then you were attacked. So tell our audience about that.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So last year at the Washington Examiner, we reported on how the State Department, the U.S. government, sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to an NGO called the Global Disinformation Index, a British NGO that we found and continues to do. They create a blacklist of conservative media outlets that they wish to defund and deplatform by pressuring advertisers to strip them of revenue. Now, following that report, what we learned, the New York Post had reported that the State Department crafted internal press guidance in connection to my stories, and a friend of mine, Matt Taibbi's great reporting on the Twitter files, and essentially sought to link our reporting to a Russian disinformation campaign. Interestingly, the State Department crafted an internal memo that they shopped to media outlets to push back on our reporting that said that Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana that tried to make it appear as if he was speaking with a Russian state-controlled media outlet in connection to my coverage of the stories, when the quote that he actually gave about First Amendment concerns was what first appeared in the Washington Examiner. It just happened that a random Russian outlet picked it up, but the State Department in that memo sought to make it appear as if Jim Banks was speaking to a Russian propaganda outlet in the Kremlin. And so that's prompted some congressional oversight recently. Jim Banks sent a letter to the State Department on this, very dissatisfied with this. And Congressman Darrell Issa of California did something similar. A watchdog organization called Functional Government Initiative recently launched its own public records investigation to the State Department to unearth records related to that. So I think there is some movement here. It'll be interesting to see if outside organizations seek to look into it more. But it's an example of the government's own efforts to push back on any ideas or reporting that has unearthed its ties to outside organizations that have appeared to try to censor voices online, specifically conservative voices.
Gabe, in the minute we have left, what's the best of what you've seen, heard, or thought about in terms of the solutions that might possibly prevent these NGOs, right, from censoring people and working with they're kind of in between private corporations, right, and the public sector, the government. What are the best ways to counter this that you've seen?
Yeah, it's a really important question. So last year, through the Defense Department spending bill, there was a law that passed that prohibited the Pentagon from funding for certain grants, the Global Disinformation Index, the group we reported on, as well as NewsGuard, a group that also rates news outlets. But that law, frankly, I think it was more sort of it was celebratory, and it was not as much, tangibly addressing the issue. But there is a current provision in the State Department appropriations bill that cleared the House because Republicans introduced that provision, and it would ban the State Department's Global Engagement Center essentially from receiving funding in the future and from funding groups aiming to thwart dis and misinformation online. And that's really important because the State Department's Global Engagement Center is the office in the State Department that's been behind a lot of these efforts in the past and really has led the charge on working with social media to thwart conservative voices online. So if that bill passes the Senate before the year is up, I think that will be really significant. I will also note that there is a current lawsuit by the Federalist, the Daily Wire, and the state of Texas through Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, against the State Department over them funding the Global Disinformation Index and NewsGuard. And that lawsuit will soon go to discovery, which could really give all of our outlets, the Examiner, the Blaze, et cetera, outlets that have been targeted, a really critical window into the government's coordination with private entities to tell us to shut the hell up, essentially.